Hey guys, welcome to part 5 of this Serum overview, where we are going to be discussing the filter modules inside of Serum. So the main filter is on your oscillator page and is right here. And you turn it on the same way you'll turn on the oscillators or the noise or sub-oscillators. You click this little box or you click on filter and it will illuminate blue. And then you'll be presented with a visual representation of the filter type and basically where the cutoff knob is. So let's talk about the different filter types that you are afforded inside of Serum. You are given a bunch. So massive users, you're going to love this because massive only comes with maybe I think probably around 10 off the top of my head filters, and Serum comes with a bunch. So when you click on the menu, you'll be seeing a drop-down menu of 4 different categories. Inside of those categories are where all the filter types are at. So the first one is this normal filter category. And these are your kind of quintessential standard filters that you would expect to hear on a synth. So these first ones you see are these MG low 6, 12, 18, 24. Well, that stands for Moog. So it's a Moog style or Moog emulated filter. So it's a stepladder type of low pass filter. And these 6, 12, and 8, and 24, they stand for the frequencies or octaves potentially of the frequencies that are being attenuated. So then you have the low 6, 12, and 8. So those are your standard low filters. You have the high pass, band pass, peak, and notch. So I'll play what some of these sound like so you can get an idea. So this cutoff knob, what this is doing is pretty much in any synth, but obviously in Serum, what it's doing is it sets the primary or main cutoff frequency dependent on the type of filter that you have chosen. So with a low pass, as you turn down the cutoff, you are going to lose high frequency content. As you turn it up, you can see that it's taking away that kind of you think of this as almost an EQ cut. It's boosting back those frequencies or attenuating them. So depending on what filter type you have, this cutoff knob is going to react differently. With the Val and the format filters, it's not going to actually like boost or attenuate the primary frequency. It's going to act a little bit differently. So let's listen to some of the other Moog low passes. And let's compare real quick just so you can hear the Moog low 24. To the low. I hear a little bit more high frequency content in the Moog. I don't know if you can hear that through this video, but I can. So it gives you that kind of little bit crispier analog feel. Then of course you have the high pass, which is the inverse of the low pass. So with the filter all the way to the left, you're going to have most of your frequency content in. And as you turn it up, you're going to lose the low frequency content and have just mainly the really high frequencies. So the high 18 is almost hard to hear for human hearing. All right, and then let's keep going through. Then you have this band pass, which in the middle, when you have it around, I would say 1,000, you should see some lows and some highs taken out. And as you turn it left or right, you will then be presented with the representation of losing either the low frequencies or the high frequencies. And then of course, you have the peak, which will take out little dips and peaks, and your resonance can control whether or not it's going to be kind of a cut or this boost. So that's a much less subtle effect than the low passes of the high pass. Then you finally have notch, which is going to notch out certain frequencies. So if you guys these are familiar to any of you guys who have watched like maybe a tutorial or a course on EQ, cutting your lows, boosting your highs, low pass, high pass, EQ sweeps, all that stuff. Then you have these multis. These are really interesting and potentially, given how flexible the envelopes and the LFOs are inside of Serum, these are going to be a godsend to a lot of different EDM producers who do like Neuro, like maybe the Neuro Funk, the dubstep, all that sort of stuff. So you have these different categories here, and it might seem like they're random letters and numbers, but they correlate to the filter types in the normal box. So by that, I mean this LH stands for a low pass combined with a high pass 6. So low pass and 6 and high pass 6. And this is, for instance, a high pass band pass 12. So they're basically two filters in one. So let's look at the low pass high 6. Well, if you have your cutoff knob about halfway, you'll see that it kind of looks like your high pass, but as you turn it down, it's going to cut out all the high frequencies like a low pass would. So if I go to my low pass filter right now, see how that sounds pretty much the same? Well, as I boost this cutoff on the low high 6, that's going to start to boost the highs of it. So the way these multis work is whatever the first letter is, that's what the cutoff knob is going to attenuate. There are a bunch of different ones. I strongly suggest that you play with those and get used to them. Then there are the ones with 3, which are going to be awesome to modulate with LFOs and envelopes. Then you have the flanges categories, and these are like your more kind of comb filters. You obviously have flange, you have phase, all that sort of stuff. So here's your comb filter. And you'll see with this comb filter, nothing happens unless you start boosting the resonance, because that's how comb filtering works. It needs resonance looped back, because the resonance essentially is a feedback loop into the filter. And that's how comb filtering works. Then you have comb filtering combined with different types of filters, like maybe a low pass 6 or a high pass. And then let's go down to this miscellaneous, because there's some cool ones in here I wanted to touch on. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but there's some interesting ones like ring mod. That's a really interesting one. The sample and hold's really cool. This is basically going to be like a bit crusher, an audio degrader. So as you turn it down, approaching this left-hand side or 330 hertz, it'll get really degraded. All right, you have 2 of those different sample and hold ones. Then you have reverb. Which the cutoff is basically controlling the dry wet of the reverb, and the drive controls almost like it's the room size. All right, and then you have the formats. Let's talk about those. So if you want to do like those format type of filters. And you'll notice that when you use these formats here, when you activate in the format wave types, this will say it'll say format, which is with the A taken out. Whereas opposed to if I go to normal, this will say fat. So when you go to any of the format type of filters, this will be the filter variable for it, which kind of is like a resonance almost of making it sound a little bit like different vowels depending on where you place that in the frequency. All right, so let's go back to the Moog 6 for this, and let's start to talk about the different controls here in the filter module. So first, let's discuss all these illuminated little squares that I have here. So the reason why you see all of these illuminated is because I have all of the oscillators running into the filter, and this stands for key tracking. So let's say you don't want a certain oscillator to run into the filter. You would unselect it. These are what tells Serum what oscillator to run into the filter, or what signal flow is going into the filter module. So when you activate the N or the S, those stand for the noise and the sub. So I have noise applied to this. I have some kind of like white high pass type of noise, and I want that running into the filter. Otherwise, it'd just stand out on top of the rest of the sound. See, and now if I go noise, see how it actually kind of comes together and glues together. If I had a sub oscillator active, it's kind of hit or miss, 50-50. Sometimes you'd run that in. Like if I had like a saw wave going on maybe, and I had it not that low a pitch. Then maybe you would have it run through. But if you have, like we talked about with the sub direct out, you may not want that to run through your filters or your effects. So then this is a really cool knob down here. This is your key tracking. So I'm going to jack up the resonance real quick. See how I'm playing right now and you kind of hear the resonance frequencies? It doesn't move with my keyboard. It's actually kind of like adding like a fifth to it right now, it seems like. Well, when you click on this and enable the key tracking, what that's going to do is it's going to key track and make the frequencies of your cutoff filter, your resonance, whatever it may be. It's going to play in harmony with or in concert with the notes that you're triggering. So it's really helpful and really musical. So let's start talking about the knobs here on Serum's filter module. The first knob you see is the cutoff knob. We already talked about it, but I'll touch on it again real quick. This is going to set the primary frequency that is being So this is going to set the primary cutoff filter of. So the cutoff knob sets the primary cutoff frequency for the filter, and then it'll show you visually what's being boosted or cut. This resonance knob is going to set the amount of the resonance into the filter. Resonance is a feedback that's being looped back into the filter circuit, or the emulated circuit in this instance. And then you have this pan knob, which should probably say stereo instead of pan, because it's not a true pan knob. What this essentially is it's spreading out some of the frequencies that are being attenuated in the cutoff or the filter knob. All right, so let's talk about something a little bit outside of Serum, but it'll give you a clearer and better understanding of why this pan or stereo knob exists in the filter module. So if you've ever heard of something called the Haas effect, that's why. So the Haas effect, or sometimes it's called the precedence effect, is, I'm assuming a guy named Haas first discovered this, but it's a psychoacoustic phenomenon that, in short, describes that our ears determine the position of a sound in the stereo field based on which ear perceives it first, and then the reflections of that sound. So that might be confusing to some of you, and in layman's terms, it basically is saying our ears suck at differentiating between stereo signals or sources that are the same thing left and right. So if you have a synth sound in massive Serum, whatever it may be, and then you render it to audio and then duplicate that track, pan it left and right, your ear is going to think it's just in the middle of the stereo field, because your ear, if you're sitting in the middle of your speaker, it's the same sound, it's the same volume, so the reflection point should be the same. And your ear isn't getting a different source of sound at a different time, so it doesn't sound different. That's why vocalists will actually double their vocal takes to get that wide feel so they can pan it left and right. Or you might have recorded a guitar where you play one pass of it in mono and then you double it so you have something to pan left and right. The slight difference in how you play it, and even if you're the world's greatest guitarist, it's going to be a little bit different in timing, allows the ear to hear one first, one ear to hear one of the signals first, and then you get this stereo image, this big stereo image. Well, mix engineers will use these tips and tricks these techniques to kind of trick the ear into that. They will maybe use sample delay, different reverbs and different effects, like maybe one will have a different EQ and then the ear thinks it's two different sources. Those things all do work, but if you use them too much or you use them too prominently, it'll actually kind of start to mess with the phase of your mix, and that's not good. You'll lose punch and you'll lose clarity. So getting back to this stereo knob inside of Serum, it's basically a really cool idea or way to introduce some stereo width in just the filter. So what it's doing is it creates a cutoff offset for the left and right signals. So at 50% or 12 o'clock, this knob has no effect. It's just basically off. When turned to the left, so counterclockwise, the left channel cutoff will increase and the right channel cutoff will decrease. So let's listen to this. Okay, so the right channel is decreasing. I'm sorry, the left channel is now louder to the left, and the right channel when it's to the right. So you can hear the frequencies are still there, but it's not actually panning it. It's just taking the frequencies that are being attenuated dependent on your cutoff knob value, and it's going to throw those either left or right. So it's a really, really cool idea. Let's talk about these final three knobs here on the filter module. You have first you'll see the drive, and what this is it's a pre-filter kind of a saturator. It's going to boost the gain of the signal before it hits the filter. So this can add some coloration to the sound. It'll increase the volume, and it can even distort with certain settings. Then you have the fat knob, which is going to increase the gain, but it's not going to apply any saturation or coloration to your sound. And then finally you have the mix, which operates as a dry wet for the filter. And a little hidden thing here, if you click on this, it'll turn to level, and then you can actually turn off and down kind of with volume your filter. So let's talk about the filter module that is housed in the effects section. Now this, you have all the same types of filters. So you have your 4 different categories, and here they all are. But what this is doing is it's happening after your sound. So for instance, let's turn this on to a formant wave type. And if I turn the mix down and go back to my oscillator filter, right? So that's our sound, kind of that resonance little boost in there. And then we go to my effects and turn on, or let's turn up the mix. So there's it on, off. I have the mix all the way down. There's the filter. So it's still keeping the sound of my first filter in the module. It's just applying it after everything, after all the effects, the phaser, the delay, the reverb, the EQ. The EQ, it happens after everything. So it's a really cool way to add some subtle things. You can dial back this mix with like basses and things like that. Then you can actually layer some of these interesting, more miscellaneous style, like the reverb or the formants, or even some of the combs or the multi-stage ones. You can actually use those in conjunction or in unison with a low-pass filter or a Moog filter. All right, so that sums up the filter module. And in the next video, we are going to start to discuss the envelopes. I'll see you there.